The Scarecrow and His Servant, Day 7. Chapter 13. The Assazis. The first thing Granny Raven told them to do was get themselves back to the mainland. This turned out to be quite easy. Some seagulls who lived by the nearest fishing port found a rowboat that wasn't being used, and they hitched it up to a team of geese, who towed it across to the island in less than a day. Once Jack and his master were on board, the birds towed it back the same way, and that very evening the two wanderers settled down under a hedge. "Who knows, Jack," said the Scarecrow. "This could be one of our last nights in the open air. We'll be sleeping in our very own farmhouse before long." Or jail, Jack thought. The next thing they had to do was make their way to the town of Fontana, which was the nearest town to Spring Valley. By walking hard, they did it in less than a week. Granny Raven had to go elsewhere on urgent business. She said, but she'd see them in the town. "You know, Jack," the Scarecrow said as they walked toward the marketplace, "I might have been mistaken about these birds. They're very good-hearted, fundamentally. No brains to speak of, but full of good intentions." "Now then, master," said Jack, "just remember, Granny Raven said she'd meet us by the fountain, and while we're in the town, I think you'd better leave the talking to me. You'll be much more impressive if you keep silent and mysterious." "Well, that's exactly what I am," said the Scarecrow. On the way, he'd managed to lose his gold medal 11 times, and the oilskin package containing his inner convictions 16. Jack thought it would be a good idea to put them in a bank and keep them safe till they were needed. So as soon as they got to the town center, with its dried-up basin that had once been the municipal fountain, they looked around for the bank. They were about to go inside when a big blackbird flew down and perched on the dusty basin and gave a loud caw. "Granny Raven," said Jack, "where have you been?" "We were just going into the bank. I've been busy," she said. "What do you think, or what do you want a bank for?" The Scarecrow explained. "We're going to deposit my inner conviction. Don't worry, we know what we're doing." "You're luckier than you deserve," said Granny Raven. "Do you know what the bank's called? It's the Banco Buffalini." The Scarecrow stared at it in dismay. "These Buffalinis are everywhere," he said. "Well, we can't trust this bank, it's obvious. I shall have to look after my inner conviction myself. Where is it? Where's it gone? Where did I put it?" "You've got it, master," said Jack. "It's safe in your straw." "But what do we do now, Granny Raven, and what's going on? There's a lot of people around." "It's the Assazis," she said. "When the judge comes around court cases, he tries all the criminals and judges all the civil cases. There he is now." As Jack and Scarecrow watched, the great doors of the town hall opened, and out came an elderly man wearing a long red robe, and at the head of the procession of men carrying maces and scrolls. Behind him came several men in black robes, who were the lawyers, and finally came the town clerk in a top hat, escorted by a procession of policemen in their very best uniforms. They crossed the square and went up the steps into the law court. "Right," said Granny Raven. "You go in after them and get a move on. But what are we going to do in there? You're going to go to court and register the Scarecrow's claim to Spring Valley." "An excellent idea, Jack," said the Scarecrow. "Let's do it at once." And before Jack could hold him back, the Scarecrow set off up the steps and in through the doors with Granny Raven sitting on his shoulder. Jack darted up behind him and found the Scarecrow arguing with an official behind the desk. "But I demand the right to have my case heard," the Scarecrow was saying, banging his umbrella on the desk. "It is an extremely important matter." "You're not on my list," said the official. "What's your name, Lord Scarecrow?" "Don't be ridiculous. Go away." Jack thought he'd better help. They were in such deep trouble already that they might as well dig a bit deeper. "Ah, you don't understand," he said. "This case is a matter of extreme urgency. It all turns on the ownership of Spring Valley, and it won't take long. If it's not settled, you see, all the water will dry up, just like the fountain out there. Stick him on the list, and we can get through it in 5 minutes, and then all the water in the valley will be safe." "Go on," said the man in the quake for the public seats. "I'd like to see a Scarecrow in court." "Yeah? Let him go first," said a woman with a shopping bag. "He's got a nice face." "He's got a face like a coconut," said the official. "Well, it is a coconut," the Scarecrow agreed. "Go on, put him on first," people were saying. "It's the only laugh we'll have today." "Yes, let Scarecrow have his case heard." "Good luck, Scarecrow." So the man had no choice. He wrote at the top of the list, "Lord Scarecrow in the case of the ownership of Spring Valley." No sooner had he done that than the door burst open, and in came a squad of policemen. At the head of them was a lean man in a black silk suit. It was the lawyer, Mr. Ciccarelli, and he said, "One moment, if you please. Inspector, arrest this person at once." Scarecrow looked around to see who was going to be arrested, only to find the chief policeman seizing his road sign and trying to put handcuffs on him. "What are you doing? Let me go. This is an outrage," he cried. Go on, boy, said Granny Raven quietly to Jack. Do your stuff. Oh, excuse me, said Jack to the lawyer, but you can't arrest Lord Scarecrow, being as he's already in the process of going to law. I beg your pardon? It's true, Mr. Circarelli, sir, said the official, showing him the list of cases to be tried. The Scarecrow shook off the handcuffs and dusted himself down with great dignity as a bell rang to summon everyone into the courtroom. Mr. Circarelli withdrew to talk urgently to a group of other lawyers in a huddle by the door. Jack watched them closely and saw them all leaning over Mr. Circarelli's shoulder to read the name of the Scarecrow's case. But as soon as they read it, they all smiled and nodded with satisfaction. Oh, blimey, he thought. Then he heard the man at the desk say something and turned to say, I beg your pardon. I said you're in luck, said the official to Jack. This is a very distinguished judge you're up in front of. He's the most learned judge in the whole of the kingdom. What's his name? Said Jack as the doors opened and the clerk of the court called for silence. Mr. Justice Buffalini, said the official. What? But it was too late to withdraw. The crowd behind them was surging and heaving to get in, and Jack saw a lot of whispering and pointing and hurrying in and out of side doors. Soon the courtroom was full to bursting, and the Scarecrow and Jack were crammed behind a table right in the middle, with lawyers to the left and right, and the judge's bench high up in front of them, and a jury filing into the jury box along the side. Everyone had to stand up as the judge came in. He bowed to the court, and everyone bowed back to him, and then he sat down. I'm getting a bit nervous, Jack whispered, and Granny Raven's vanished. I don't know what to do. No, Jack, the Scarecrow whispered back. Have confidence in the law, my boy. Right is on our side. Silence, bellowed the clerk. First case, Scarecrow versus the United Benevolent Improvement Chemical Works. The Scarecrow smiled and nodded his coconut. Jack put his hand. What? Said the judge. Excuse me, your worship, said Jack, but it's all going a bit fast. Who are these United Benevolent Improving people? Well, if it comes to that, said the judge, who are you? And he beamed at all the lawyers, and they all slapped their sides and roared with laughter at the judge's sparkling legal wit. I'm Lord Scarecrow's legal representative, said Jack, and my client wants to know who these United Improvers are, because we never heard of them till now. If I may explain, my lord, said Mr. Circarelli, rising smoothly to his feet, I act for the United Benevolent Improvement Society, which is the body that holds a majority shareholding in the company known as the United Benevolent Improvement Chemical and Industrial Company, which is the operating organization that runs the United Benevolent Improvement Chemical Works, which owns and operates several factories situated in Spring Valley for the beneficial exploitation of certain mineral and water rights granted to the United Benevolent Improvement Society, which is a registered charity under the Act of 1772 and acts as a holding company in the case of the United Benevolent Improvement Chemical Works by Teneras Predictus Terras. There you are, said the judge to Jack. Perfectly clear. Now, be quiet while we hear this case and find for the defendant. All right, said Jack. Well, my lord, I'd like to ask Lord Scarecrow to be a witness. All the other lawyers went into a huddle. Long words came buzzing out like wasps around a fruit tree. The Scarecrow smiled at everyone in the court, gazing all around with great pride and satisfaction. Finally, Mr. Circarelli said, We have no objections, your lordship. He will, of course, be subject to cross-examination. Scarecrow to the witness box, called the clerk of the court. The Scarecrow stood up and bowed to the judge, to the jury, to the clerk, to the lawyers, and to the public. Stop bobbing up and down like a chicken and get into the witness box, snapped the judge. A chicken, said the Scarecrow. It's a legal term, master, said Jack hastily. Oh, in that case, it's perfectly all right, said the Scarecrow, and bowed again all around. The members of the public, watching from the gallery, were enjoying it a great deal. They settled down comfortably as Jack began. What is your name? He said. The Scarecrow looked puzzled. He scratched his coconut. It's Lord Scarecrow, said Jack helpfully. Leading the witness, called one of the lawyers. Strike it from the record, said the judge. You, boy, confine yourself to questions. Don't tell the witness what to say. All right, said Jack. He's called Lord Scarecrow. I'm his servant, by the way. And a very good one, said the Scarecrow. Silence, called the judge. Get on with the examination, boy. And as for you, you scoundrel, hold your tongue. The Scarecrow nodded approvingly and beamed at everyone. The people in the public gallery began to giggle. Now then, said Jack, I put it to you, Lord Scarecrow, that this United Benevolent Improvement Society is not the legal owner of Spring Valley. Quite right, said the Scarecrow. Then who is? I am. And can you prove that? I hope so, said the Scarecrow doubtfully. The people in the gallery began to laugh. Silence in the court, said the judge, and glared furiously. When everyone was quiet again, he said to Jack, If you don't get to the point, I shall have you both arrested for wasting the court's time. Has your witness got anything useful to say, or has he not?" "Oh, indeed he has, your lordship. Let me just ask him again." "You can't go on asking him the same question. Just once more. Honest." "Once, then." "Thank you very much, your lordship. Right. Here goes. Lord Scarecrow, how do you know that you are the owner of Spring Valley?" "Ah," said the Scarecrow, "I've got an inner conviction. I've always had it. In fact, I've got it here," he went on, fumbling in his chest. "I know it's here, somewhere. Yes, here it is." "Yes, that's it," said Jack. "Your lordship, members of the jury, ladies and gentlemen, this piece of paper proves beyond any doubt whatsoever that Spring Valley belongs to Lord Scarecrow, and these united benevolizers are being illegal. I rest my case." "But what does it say, you stupid boy?" snapped the judge. "Get your client to read it out to the court." "Well, he's never learned to read, your lordship." "Well, you read it then." "But I never learned to read either. It's a big drawback, and if I'd have known then what I know now, I'd have arranged to be born in a rich family and not into a poor one. I'm sure I'd have learned to read then." "If you don't know how to read," demanded the judge, "how do you know what's on that paper? I warn you, boy, you're in great danger." "My lord," said one of the lawyers, "all he has to do is hand it to your lordship, and your lordship can read it out for the benefit of the court." "Oh, no, you don't," said Jack at once. "We want separate verification, according to the principle of non-independent judge no goody. So there." This was getting more and more difficult. But just then Jack saw a movement out of the corner of his eye, and he looked up at a high window to see Granny Raven making her way in, accompanied by a nervous-looking blackbird. She made the blackbird sit in the corner of the windowsill and didn't let him move. "However," Jack went on, relieved, "I think I can see a way out of this legal minefield. I'd like to invite my associate, Granny Raven, to come and take over this part of the case." Granny Raven glided down and perched on the table next to Jack, causing great excitement among the public and great consternation on the part of the lawyers. They went into a huddle, and then Mr. Circarelli said, "My lord, it is quite impossible to allow this, on the grounds of ridiculous verdus pretendibus lawyerum." But Jack said at once, "My client is only a poor scarecrow, without a penny to his name. Is the law of the land designed only for the rich? Surely not. And if, out of the goodness of her heart, this raven, this poor, elderly, shabby, broken-down old bird, offers to represent the scarecrow because she is all he can afford, then surely this great court and this noble judge will not deny my client the meager help that she can bring. Look at the vast wealth, the profound resources, the eminent legal minds ranged against us. Your lordship, members of the jury, ladies and gentlemen of the public, is there no justice to be had in the assizes of Bellafontana? Is there no mercy?" All right, said the judge, who could see that everyone in the public gallery was nodding in sympathy. "Let the bird speak on behalf of the scarecrow." "I should think so, too," said Granny Raven, and then added quietly to Jack, "Shabby and broken down, eh? I'll have a word with you later." The scarecrow was watching everything with great interest. "Well, go on, then," said the judge. "Right," said Granny Raven. "Now pay attention. You, Scarecrow, step down from the witness box. I want to summon 2 more witnesses before I speak to you again. Mr. and Mrs. Piccolini, into the witness box." Nervously, arm in arm, the elderly couple, who'd been packing to leave their cottage, came through the courtroom and stepped up into the box. Once they'd given their names and addresses, Granny Raven said, "Now tell the court what happened just before your neighbor died." "Well, our neighbor, Mr. Pandolfo," said Mrs. Piccolini, "he hadn't been well, poor old man, and when he asked us to step over to his house, we thought he was going to ask us to call the doctor. But instead, he just asked us to watch him sign a piece of paper and then to sign it as well. So we did." "Did he tell you what was on the paper?" "No." "Would you recognize the paper again?" "Yes. Mr. Pandolfo was drinking some coffee, and he spilled a drop or two on the corner of the paper, so it would have a stain on it." Granny Raven turned to Jack and said, "Go on, open it up." Jack opened the oilskin package and held out the paper. As the old woman had said, there was a coffee stain on the corner. Everyone gasped. All the lawyers rose to their feet at once, protesting, but Granny Raven clacked her beak so loudly that they all fell still. "Don't you want to hear what the paper says?" she said. "Because everybody else does." They went into a huddle, and after a minute, one of them said, "We are willing to agree to the letters being read out by an independent witness." "In that case," said Jack, "we nominate that lady in the jury box." He pointed to an old lady in a blue dress. The scarecrow stood up and bowed to her. and she looked very flustered and said, "Well, if you like, I don't mind." She put on a pair of glasses, and Jack handed her the letter. She quickly skimmed it through and said, "Oh dear, poor old man." Then the old lady read in a clear voice, "This letter was written by me, Carlo Pandolfo, being of sound mind, but not very well in the legs, and is addressed to whom it may concern. As I am the legal owner of Spring Valley, and I can dispose of it however I please, I choose this manner of settling the ownership after I peg out. And I particularly want to keep the farm and all the springs and wells and watercourses and ponds and streams and fountains out of the hands of my cousins, those rascal Buffalinis, because I don't trust any of them, and they are a pack of scoundrels, every one. And I have no wife or children or nieces or nephews, and no friends either, except Mr. and Mrs. Piccolini down the hill. So I shall make a scarecrow and place him in the 3-acre field by the orchard, and in him I shall put this letter. And this letter shall be my last will and testament. And I leave Spring Valley with all its buildings and springs and wells and watercourses and ponds and streams and fountains to the said Scarecrow, and it shall belong to him in perpetuity, and I wish him good luck. That is all I have to say. Carlo Pandolfo." When the lady reached the end of the letter, there was silence. Then the Scarecrow said, "Well, I did tell you I had an inner conviction." And then there was an uproar. All the lawyers began talking at once. All the people in the public gallery turned to one another and said, "Did you hear that? Well, I never. Have you ever heard? What about?" The clerk of the court called for silence, and everyone stopped to see what the judge would say. But it was Granny Raven who spoke. "There you are," she said. "That's the long and the short of it. The will is legal and properly witnessed, and Spring Valley belongs to the Scarecrow, and we can all—" "One moment," said Mr. Ciccarelli. "Not so fast. We haven't finished yet." Chapter 14. A Surprise Witness. Everyone looked at the judge. The look on his face was enough to make Jack feel that all his ribs had come loose and fallen into the pit of his stomach. "The first witness has yet to be cross-examined," he said. "Mr. Ciccarelli, you may proceed." "Thank you, my lord," said the lawyer. Jack looked at Granny Raven. What was going to happen now? But he couldn't read any expression on the old bird's face. The Scarecrow climbed back up into the witness box, smiling all around. Mr. Ciccarelli smiled back, and the two of them looked like the best of friends. Then the lawyer began. "You are the Scarecrow mentioned in the letter we have just heard?" "Oh, yes," said the Scarecrow. "You are sure of that?" "Absolutely sure." "No doubt at all?" "No, none whatsoever. I'm certainly me, and I always have been." "Well, Mr. Scarecrow, let us examine your claim a little more closely. Let us examine you a little more closely," he said, smiling at everyone again. The Scarecrow smiled back. "Let's examine your left hand, for example," said the lawyer. "It's a remarkable hand, is it not?" "Oh, yes, it keeps the rain off," said the Scarecrow, opening his umbrella and closing it again quickly when the judge frowned at him. "And where did you get such a splendid hand?" "From the marketplace in the town, where I starred in the tragical history of Harlequin and Queen Dido," said the Scarecrow proudly. "It was a great performance. First I came on as— I'm sure it was enthralling, but we're talking about your hand. You lost your original hand, did you?" "Yes, it came off, so my servant got me this one." "Splendid, splendid. Now can you show us your right hand?" The Scarecrow stuck his right hand in the air. "It looks like a road sign," said the lawyer. "Is that what it is?" "Oh, yes. It points, you see. As soon as my servant got this for me, I became very good at pointing." "And why did your servant get you a new right hand?" "Because the first one broke off." "I see, thank you. So you have neither of the arms you were born with?" Jack jumped up to protest. He could see where this was leading. "Your lordship, it doesn't make any difference which bits have been replaced. He's still the same Scarecrow." "Oh, but it does, your lordship," said Mr. Ciccarelli. "We are seeking to establish how much of the original Scarecrow, created by Mr. Pandolfo, still remains. If there is none, then the will is null and void, and the estate of Spring Valley passes to the United Benevolent Improvement Society, according to the principle absolutum absurdius scaraburdius landlordum." "Quite right," said the judge. "Carry on." And in spite of Jack's protest, Mr. Ciccarelli went through the Scarecrow's whole story, showing how every bit of him had been replaced, including the very straw inside him. "And so, members of the jury," he concluded, We can see clearly that the Scarecrow made by Mr. Pandolfo, the Scarecrow to whom he intended to leave Spring Valley, no longer exists. Every component particle of him has been scattered to the four winds. There is nothing left. This gentleman in the witness box, so proud of his left hand that keeps the rain off and his right hand that points so well, is no more than a fraud and an impostor. Hey, said Jack. No, wait a minute. Silence, said the judge. Members of the jury, you have heard an account of the most shameless attempt at fraud, deception, maleficence, embezzlement, and theft that has ever been my misfortune to hear about. Your duty now is very simple. You have to retire to the jury room and decide to do as I tell you. You must find for the defendants and decide that the United Benevolent Improvement Society are the true owners of Spring Valley. The court will,